In 2016 alone, alcohol abuse was responsible.
According to studies, over 50% of all suicides are associated with alcohol.
A leading drug addiction expert, Mark Dempster.
My experience is they don't have a moral deficiency. They tell themselves that they're going to stop. They tell themselves they're never going to steal from other people. Well, I think counselling, one-to-one counselling, but very focused on addiction.
Welcome to Khan Klinics, your dedicated space for exploring the vital connections that shape your well-being. Here we dive into everything from achieving peak physical fitness by mastering sustainable weight management to optimizing your diet for a vibrant life. We're passionate about uncovering the power interplay between your mental and physical health, offering you insightful strategies to nurture both. Join us as we unlock the secrets to embark on your self-confidence and your inspiration by interviewing top-rated personalities, not from only the US, but around the world. At Khan Klinics, our commitment is to bring you evidence-based information that inspires you to confidently control your health journey and live your life to the absolute fullness. I'm your host, Amir Khan. Let's get ready to unlock the true potential of being a human with the most amazing people around us.
So we wanted to shift to specifically your works. So in the ongoing path, you emphasize that recovery is not a destination, but a continuous journey.
Yeah.
What do you believe is the most challenging aspect of this ongoing path for individuals? What practical, unconventional strategies do you recommend for navigating it?
Well, I often the most challenging time for people. Oh God, there's various factors, but I think when people get sober, clean, or they stop a behavior, when they have loss, when they have emotional loss, like whether it's like partners or whether it's like their family or friends, I think when there's deeper emotional pain, people then don't know how to deal, especially in their early days on the recovery path. You know, if they get into a relationship, say, and they're quite early, and the person rejects them or abandon, or maybe cheats on them or whatever it might be.
Mhm.
I think when people are really early in the recovery, they've not developed emotional muscle, tenacity, and resilience. So when they become obsessed with some, or not necessarily obsessed, but when they fall in love, or they really let themselves feel connected with somebody and they're rejected, it's a really high risk time, right? Because they've not developed. It takes time in recovery, in abstinence, to develop emotional muscle, and you get stronger and stronger in the recovery path because you deal with lots of things throughout your recovery process. The idea is also that you don't, because it's an ongoing, it's not a destination. Your mind tries to say, I want a day off. I want, at some point in the future, I want to just be able to take a drug or a drink or gamble or have set, or look at pornography, whatever it might be, but there is no days off in recovery. Look, I'm 28 years clean. And I guarantee you, if I took a drink or a drug, even although I've been 28 years clean, it would be like opening up Pandora's box. It'd be like letting the lion out the cage, because you have a thing called an abstinence violation effect. My addiction is still there like it always was, but it's just that I've been in recovery the whole time. But if I let my guard down and I let myself think that I could drink or drug again, I would be deluding myself and it would kill me. I've watched it so many times. You wouldn't believe my best friends in recovery at 10 years and at 14 years sober picked up a drink and a drug again, and they're both dead. And and I've seen it. I've seen people with 30 years clean and sober. I mean, we see it all the time in the news. We see it. I can have a day off. Then we're completely deluded. There is no such thing. It's an illusion.
Mark, as a follow-up question, tell us what's your experience about addiction in women and addiction in adolescents. I know men are at the forefront of a
Yeah.
lot of these issues. What's your thoughts on that? On those two? I know in children,
Yeah, right. I think it's much more difficult for women to admit that they've got a problem in our society here in the West. When a woman who's a mother, especially, walks into a treatment service or to a counselling service even and says, "Oh, I've got an addiction," and they start to ask the questions about, "Do you have children?" Immediately the women the culture can be, well, there's a protection issue around the children, and are you being a good mother? There's a sort of judgment that can come. Now, look, if the woman is not got children, maybe it's a bit different, but I see far less women in the West get recovery from addictions than there is men. Now, you could say, oh, there's more men have addictions, so obviously, but I also see that, and this is the fact, right? And when I used to manage rehabs and residential rehabs, there's far more women who have been sexually abused or interfered with, and there's far more women that have had some type of sexual abuse than there is men, and there's a trauma that they've suffered. I would say in the rehabs there was at least 1 in 3 women that had been sexually abused. The whole class through a scanner, you'd be able to see who the kids that are going to be predisposed. Look, as soon as you've got family, as soon as you've got mother or father who's got addiction within a family system, the child is 4 times more likely. They used to. I think, look, nowadays they're identifying that lots of young people here have got ADHD, and if they're ADHD, they're likely to then look for a way to raise the dopamine levels.
Exactly. Given your work with ADHD and addiction, can tell us what are the frequently overlooked signs that an individual's addictive behaviors are linked with that undiagnosed or untreated ADHD or whatever it may be, and how can professionals better screen for this?
Well, I think now, look, it's difficult here in England because the NHS they don't have the resources to test. I mean, it's really most the people here that really get their kids tested for ADHD have got the money to do the assessments. It's still quite a costly exercise, even privately, using psychiatrists to. But really, where you see a child, whether they're hyperactive or whether they're deregulated, emotionally dysregulated in a way where they've got depression, they've got poor dopamine tone, these would be, and the rejection sensitivity, where you've got young people who are very sensitive to rejection, and you would be able to see, like, hopefully as a professional, or a parent say, "Oh, look, I think my child may have ADHD, and in which case, let's get them checked, and therefore, if they're ADHD, they're much more susceptible to looking for some way to raise their dopamine. They might be much more predisposed to addiction because of their condition. I think nowadays it's a really big. Personally, I remember years ago, a friend of mine who was doing all the assessments for ADHD. He was saying to me then, he says, look, if you took most people with addictions, I would say all of them really are ADHD. They've all got, and then you would say, well, actually, which came first? Did the ADHD come first, and then the addiction is a sort of mechanism, really, whatever the addiction is, to deal with their ADHD. Now, obviously here, and well, not obviously, but what generally happens here is they'll prescribe Elvans or Ritalin or not so much Adderall, but which can be really useful for kids during school times anyway, particularly to focus on their schoolwork and to focus, because there's a reinforcing pattern, isn't there? Like if the child's self-esteem is low and they get a negative message which says that they're not, that they're failing their exams or whatever, and they keep doing that, then that affects the self-esteem, and then they sort of hang out with the wrong crowd, and who are also failing, who have also probably got ADHD, and then then they start experimenting with drugs at a young age, and the younger you are when you first take drugs and alcohol, the more likely you're going to develop an addiction to it. I mean, the factors really are things like trauma, early exposure to drugs, any adverse childhood experiences, really, and the heightened sensitivity. If you've got those factors, then you've got to be able to, as a parent or as a friend or mentor, if you see these sort of key factors, that the heightened sensitivity and any type of traumatic experience, adverse childhood experiences, then we need to focus on how we're going to support that young person, not go on the road to drug addiction.
Fantastic. I think that's fascinating. Where we talk about, and Mark, you talked about how trauma, and it could be to women, it could be to anyone, the exposure that you get from drugs early on, and you mentioned earlier in your talk about how it runs in families, and then it could be even a society contributing because of the culture. Let's say we just quoted the British culture, but we see the funny or the humor part of it as well. And then you mentioned how these people are talented as well. They may have a myopic vision about it, but they go on to do great, brilliant things with addiction.
I know.
My follow-up question and my last question, or my question, would be: what tips would you give to our audience to say how they're going to stay away from these addictions?
I think there's something to be said about, for young people, knowing as much, like young people and people in their 20s or even older. Look, we have here in the UK also a key factor of drug-related. I used to monitor all drug-related deaths, and we could see that people, when they retire, when they've worked for an organisation for years and then they retire, and say their wife has died or that they've not got a relationship anymore, they're really at risk. Older people are also very at risk of developing alcoholism in this country. It's really high rates because they don't, thinking about, we get our self-esteem mostly from our work, what we do, which provides meaning and purpose in life and structure, and our relationships, our intimate relationships. So if my self-esteem, I've got very low because so there's that factor around older people. I would say with younger people, you've got to give them as much information about what's out there, resources. what self-help groups are there, what counselling they can have, they can go and speak to people. You've got to also minimise the shame about it by saying it's not a weakness, it's not a moral deficiency. But by asking for help, it's a strength, it's an empowerment
Brilliant.
by being vulnerable and asking. So we're trying to give as much information. I think in America it's much. Look, I tell you, I understand because spent quite a bit of time in America, and years ago I remember thinking, God, people are really much more open and receptive than it is in, say, England there, because they knew about treatment, they knew about like 12 steps, they were very involved from a young age because there'd been something happening there's recovery universities and stuff like that. So I think we've got to always provide education, as much education, resources that where you can come to. Don't feel embarrassed about admitting you've got a problem. It's not a weakness. We welcome.
If in fact I want to put that out there, it's a weakness in the society not recognizing them. It's not a weakness on the person. It's a weakness in the society that they have not recognized why to look after these people, number one, and why aren't we educated enough to help them out? So they should never be ashamed or anything.
Yeah, so just the final question, Mark. If you could distill your entire body of work and life experience into one core message for someone feeling hopeless about their addiction, what would that message be? And why is it the most important thing they need to hear?
Because I would say to them, don't listen to their mind. If their mind is telling that there's no way out, or that they can't get better, or they can't empower themselves to live a recovery lifestyle and get free from addiction, not to believe that maybe even some of their friends who have got addictions as well, try and have hope that they can achieve it. It's really important. Now, sometimes we need somebody to believe in us until we can believe in ourselves. Sometimes we just don't have the hope, and that's why we have to engage with whatever treatment, whatever counselling service, whatever 12 steps or smart meetings or whatever it is, because somebody can believe in us for enough time that we can start believing in ourselves. We also have got to, this is important, is that I've got to change when I'm in addiction. When I was in addiction, I circulated around the same people that were also in addiction, and they brought me down. It was like the crab bucket analogy. If I started to get well or try to get out from to do something different, they would pull me down like crabs do. And so I had to change my playgrounds, my playmates, and my playthings. I had to basically get away from the things that I'd always done that created the same problem over and over again. So I couldn't, we say if you sit in a barber shop long enough, you get a haircut. If I go to the same places, the same people that are collude with me around my addiction, I'm going to not get well. I need to get well. And the way I do that is I have to break the addiction. I have to look at my friendship circles. I have to look at, which are nurturing, healthy relationships and what are dysfunctional, addictive relationships.
Yeah. All right. Well, Mark Dempster, thank you so for openly sharing your powerful story and profound expertise. You've truly shown us that even from rock bottom, a path to purpose and healing can be found. To our listeners, if Mark's insights resonated with you today, don't keep this lifeline to yourself. Share this episode. Let's create a ripple effect of hope and understanding about addiction and recovery across our communities.
Mark, thank you very much for being on the show.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. See you soon.
See you soon. What a remarkable journey we've just experienced together. The path to health isn't always straight. but it's always worth the effort. I hope today's conversation inspired you to take the next step in your wellness journey, armed with new knowledge and a fresh perspective. If today's episode left you inspired, share it with people, someone who need to hear this. Give us a thumbs up and your opinion. Keep exploring, keep evolving, and we'll see you in the next episode of Khan Klinics.